called the speaker meeting. Our speaker will share his experience, strength, and hope for approximately 45 minutes. We ask out of respect for our speaker to please remain seated until he has finished. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker this evening, John M.
Good evening, everybody. My name is John. I'm an alcoholic. Are there any other alcoholics in here? Cool. I heard there were some birthdays, too. What'd we have? I was standing outside.
No birthdays.
Oh, no birthdays? Just clap for it? Good. Nothing wrong with that. Well, I'm really glad, you were supposed to have another John E., who's a good friend of mine. I've been living in Prescott for 30 years. My sobriety date is February 12th, 1991. I came here to go to treatment because I couldn't do it just by coming to meetings. And if there's anybody in the room that is sober today because you came to meetings and you stuck with it, my hat's off to you. I don't know about you all, but I came in here, I was a tough case. I was very defensive, and actually, truth be told, I was scared. And I wasn't socialized or taught to be scared or to admit fear. Don't let them see you sweat, right? Be a man. I don't know, whatever that means. But I'm really glad to be here tonight. When John called me and asked me to sub for him because he and his wife are in Yuma, I was more than happy to do that. I was a little ambivalent. As you see, I wore a mask coming in here. Where I work, we take very seriously the guidelines of the CDC and this damned epidemic or pandemic that we're in, and trying to play it safe. Because I want to live one day at a time. That's one thing my recovery has given me. I don't want to die stupidly. Anyway, not saying that people that aren't wearing masks and all that are stupid. So, well, I'm really winning the audience over here, aren't I? Anyway, everybody gets a choice, and we do have a choice, and that's what's cool about the freedom that we have here together. Anyway, I came here to go to treatment. I went through Prescott House. And I was there for 90 days. They told me it was going to be 90 days, but I was, right. I was a 5-monther. Basically, I had a lot of therapy before I ever got to treatment. I did 2 stints in primary treatment. And the real simple story is I didn't follow directions the first time. So I spent 6 months 6 weeks in primary treatment. Went back to Nashville, Tennessee, where I was living at the time, and I didn't follow any directions because these people, these treatment professionals, they don't really know what real life is about. I had obligations. I had a job. I had child support to pay. I had to do these things, and so I pick and choose what I wanted to do. And of course, you know how that turned out. Self-will shows up. One of the definitions my sponsor talks about self-will is anything that we do that we don't run by our sponsor first. That keeps it simple. Anybody do things that they didn't run by their sponsor first? You don't have to raise your hands. You don't have to raise your hands. We all do it, right? But I learned to practice those things after I had a thorough butt kicking. I lost everything. They told me when I was in treatment the first time, after a divorce, I hit bottom. And basically, I hit bottom in a dramatic way, like a lot of us do. I was in the buckle of the Bible Belt. I was a former Baptist minister. I was a chaplain, pastoral counselor at an 800-bed hospital in Nashville, Tennessee. So if I'm going to hit bottom, I'm going to do it right there in the buckle of the Bible Belt as an ordained minister. There's a lot to that story, and you can fill in the blanks, but inside I didn't feel like I belonged. And I found out in treatment that I'm shame-based. And what that means is I'm not just guilty, feeling bad for something I did. I feel bad for who I am. That's what shame is. And I tried to ordain it, baptize it, dip it, justify it, get it right, and it didn't work. I'm happy to say. And I found you all. Anyway, but I didn't want to join the club. You know, I remember going to Nashville after my first treatment, divorced, keeping my job. They told me to quit. And I called my girlfriend that they had to help me in treatment to break up with, which is a whole nother story. But by the way, guys, if you're ever in treatment and you have females with you, don't let them write your termination letter. They're mean. But that's what it took. Because, you know, my letter was 2 pages long, and my therapist said, nope, that's not going to work. Because I started reading it, and she stopped me and picked all the women in my group, and they went out and they wrote it, and it was like in 3 lines, and it was over. Well, part of that was, in reality, my own trauma from growing up in a very dysfunctional home. My mother, I was the oldest of 3. My mother died from Darvon addiction and chronic depression. I knew about the opioid epidemic in 1968. It's not news to me. Prescription drugs, Darvon. Back then they said it wasn't addictive. Now it's off the market. It's such a dangerous drug. Prescription drug, given by doctors. Anyway, there was violence in my home. I don't know if any of you all have taken the assessment, the ACEs, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Survey. It's a 10-question survey. It's very simple. And I scored a 7. And what that means is I should be in an institution or institutionalized or on somebody's caseload watching over me. And that's not lost on me. And you'll understand why for those of you who don't know me. So at any rate, I go back to Nashville. I didn't follow any directions. I got back with the girlfriend, and that was crazy because they told me to, don't get back with her. And of course, I don't know if you guys are like me, but I still have a hard time when somebody says, don't do that. I've gotten a lot better because I'm older now. And it hurts a lot quicker, fortunately. But at any rate, so anyway, I go back after I lost everything. I got fired from my job. It turns out that in the buckle of the Bible Belt, that if you get drunk on the weekends and chase nurses and stuff, it doesn't lead to longevity in your career as a minister. But that was killing me. That was killing me, and I'm grateful for that, all of the experience. And I was thinking about the promises, and I used to sit where some of you that are maybe newcomers here, and I would hear the promises, and I'm thinking, and I would hear people tell their stories about how their lives had changed and how things got better, and they got their truck back and their trailer back and their dog back and whatever, their job back, all these good things. And I thought, nuh-uh, not for me, because not only did I commit the unpardonable sin, which whatever that is, they keep that general anyway, just so they can hold it over you and scare you. That's my opinion. But at any rate, but I had done it because, I'm a piece of crap. I'm flawed. There's something really wrong with me. That was what was inside of me. Took a lot of treatment to get to that. So anyway, I lost all my holdouts, because we all have holdouts. And that's why I love this program, the 4th and 5th step inventory. It's where we really need to tell our secrets. We need to tell everything. We need to put it out in black and white, every last thing. And so I didn't do that the first time. And as a result, within 7 months, I was drinking again. I thought that was a good idea. And then went back to treatment again for another 6-week stint. And then I went to my therapist. And this little voice, all of us have it, because in the big book it says, in every man, woman, and child is the fundamental idea of God. To me, that's what that is. You can call it higher self, inner child, conscience, whatever. But that voice, right? And so I'm getting close to finishing. treatment the second time, and this voice said, "John, you need more." Now, I didn't know where I was going to go. I'd burned the bridges in Nashville. I didn't know what I was going to do, so I didn't really have any plans, but I still was disheartened that I heard that voice. But I learned through a lot of pain, because that's what it took for me, and a lot of loss, to maybe try it somebody else's way. So I went to my therapist and I said, "Steve, I don't know what this means, but this voice is telling me I need more." And then he got this smile, and I went, "Oh, shit." You're going to Prescott House, boy. And I'm really grateful for that. And, we can, bug on treatment centers. And we can even be right, because they don't get it right all the time. But I tell you what, it saved my life. And here's why. My father was the son of an alcoholic who was very violent. My dad was he was a rageaholic. I watched him tear up a lawnmower with his bare hands in a fit of rage. And he took that on me too, many times. And the things that happened to me, in this state, he would be in prison for. God rest his soul. He didn't know any better. He did the best he could, but it was just really, really traumatic for me. So that's the fear part. And I was afraid of men, actually. I could compete with you on the ball field or on the court. I could, do what we call, apologize, but this is what we call it, grab assing, when you try to one-up each other. I could do that with the guys. But let's not talk about anything like my vulnerability. You kidding me? But what I learned the most from being at Prescott House for me was the value of what it means to be a man in the world, and how important other sober men were to me in my life. And that was the gift. Not that there's men out there that are perfect. Our sponsors aren't perfect. I'm not perfect. None of us are perfect. That ain't even the rules of the game, because we can nitpick the shit out of that. But to find that connection, to know that I do belong. And then I found these men. I had my first sponsor, and then my second sponsor, who's now my sponsor to this day. And the gift of being able to have that connection was big, because I didn't have that with my own father. And here's what happened. One of the things, there were many things that happened. So they told me, don't get in a relationship. Well, I'd been in relationships, I was female dependent. My mother, I had a mommy wound, I guess they would call that. I don't know if that's a clinical term, but it was like I was looking, whenever I went through my divorce, I went to the bars and I was looking for the perfect one. But little did I know, I was taking this wounded little boy and say, "You take care of me." It didn't look like that, believe me. It's actually very pathetic what I would do in the bars. I was thinking I was really cool, but at any rate, it's the law of mutual attraction. So, this is what I learned from my therapist back in Nashville, the law of mutual attraction. She was a recovering alcoholic, I found out later. Anyway, I'm going to attract somebody to my level of dysfunction, not any better. So the reasonably healthy people are going to move away from me when I'm in that state, if I don't heal this stuff within me. And so I stayed out of a relationship for close to a year. And then I met my wife, Greta Stromberg. She's a therapist here in town. Been here, actually, she preceded me. She was from Nashville, and we met here in Prescott. And last July 22nd, we celebrated 27 years of marriage together. Now, that's a miracle. Thank you. And she wouldn't mind me telling you, she's in the program, she's in recovery, and one of the things both of us wanted to do when we met each other, we wanted to do it all differently. That's what recovery is about, doing everything differently. And the way my sponsor explains it, if you're right-handed, do it left-handed. So like, if you just try this on, tonight when you go to bed, brush your teeth, Try it the opposite hand. See how weird that feels. Well, that's how it's supposed to feel, this whole recovery thing. Uncomfortable, weird, unnatural. And what later happened for me in working the steps, going to meetings, getting a sponsor, telling the truth quicker. Telling the truth quicker. I didn't say always telling the truth, right? Because today I'm grateful that I have that thing that goes, you know, I'm not going to, no, I got to talk about this. So, and I've hit sober bottoms. A lot of people go, well, you know, at about 15 years sober, same like with Bill W., he wrote a article for the Grapevine about emotional sobriety. And he was about 15 or maybe 20 something years sober, and you know, he was saying things like, is this all there is? And here was the guy that was one of the co-founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. But I remember I was in LA, I was at a conference, I was doing all the good stuff, I was going to meetings, but I'm sitting there and it just washed over me. And I'm thinking, and it was like a shame attack almost. And it, you know, but I had learned through muscle memory is to pick up the phone. And I called my sponsor. And I reached out to some sober people that I met because at the conference I was at in LA, they had some meetings. But I'll tell you what, it was frightening. Because I had 15 years of sobriety and I was triggered. And I thought, and I had all those thoughts. Wow, this isn't working. And what my sponsor reminded me, the fact that you're feeling that means it's working. Because you're awake and you're sober. And I didn't have to fix that. I didn't have to fix it with drugs or alcohol or another woman who was not my wife or anything else. Just practice these principles. Practice. Now, one of the things that's probably saved my butt as a kid is that I played baseball. I actually wanted to play for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Sorry about that Yankee there back there. Because they spring trained in my hometown, Vero Beach, Florida. And I wasn't good enough. Let's just, this is an honest program, right? I was pretty good, but not good enough. But practice was so crucial. So that was not a phrase or a concept that was wasted on me. So we practice these principles. That means we fall down. That means we flub up. Guess what? That means we don't look good the first time or the fifth time or the eighth time we do it, right? And so that was the thing that almost killed me. Because I had developed this persona, not in my recovery, but coming up. It wasn't who you knew or what you knew, but it was how good you looked. And I really relied so much on that is that I would try to blend into whatever situation I was in, and it was killing me. But inside, it was like, I remember I got my first year coin, and it said on the back of it, to thine own self be true. And I understood the words. I mean, I had a master's degree, so I mean, I was intelligent. But it didn't sink in. It didn't register. I didn't know what that felt like, to thine own self be true. Because there had to be a self there. He was so buried with all this crap and all this false belief, which I believe 6 and 7 steps are, that we call them character defects. But I think it stems from false beliefs or old beliefs that we make current by our behavior. An example of that is just the thinking. Like if I make a mistake, and what I learned in this program, again, a phrase from my sponsor, you can't save your ass and your face at the same time. You're not going to look good doing this. So being vulnerable, what I learned in treatment, it took being around a bunch of old stinky testosterone men for 5 months. They kept me for 5 months. They promised 90 days. They kept me for 5 months. I understand now they have longer stints there, but it's exactly what I needed. And let me tell you this, guys. I learned more about how to love my wife from the men in my life. It's the men in my life that taught me how to be intimate and honest. How to have a heart. How to embrace the heart I already had. Because remember I said in the big book it says, in every man, woman, and child is a fundamental idea of God. Now, look, I was ordained, but I was angry with God. My grandmother on my mother's side had committed suicide. She had chronic depression. I found out much later. My mother died at age 40. I watched her flip-flop and do all kinds of stuff for about 5 years before she died. My father was violent. I was afraid of him. And the miracle of this program gave me a life I never would imagine. And if it can happen for me, it can happen for anybody in this room. And all it takes is your willingness. Actually, your decision. I used to hear in the preamble, it says, if you want what we have and you're willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to, right? You guys just read that, right? Tonight. That's not what it says. If you have decided you want what we have. Every moment, every situation, no matter what has happened to you, what has ever happened to me, the assholes in our lives, the resentments that we build, at every juncture, we have the opportunity to make a decision. And that's the power of this program. Because recovery, this program is about power. It's not about powerlessness. But the weird thing is we have to admit that we're powerless. But when we practice these principles, the power comes. And I don't know about you, I still, today, I don't like to feel uncomfortable. But if you're committed, if you made a decision, like I have, one day at a time, one moment at a time, you're going to feel uncomfortable. But here's another thing. When I got my first year chip, there was a Hispanic fellow in Chino Valley. I think he's still around, Manny. Great guy. I haven't seen him in a long time, but he came up to me and he said two things. He said, John, your first year is for you, the rest is for others. And then he said, keep coming back. It gets better. It does get better. I don't care what health issues you may have and be facing. I don't care what family situation or financial situation as the case may be, because many of it is a situation, right? For all of us. But if you make a commitment, this is something they said to me and I wanted to debunk it immediately when I heard it. You may do the same thing, and that's okay. More power to you. If you make your recovery your number one priority, everything will work out. Everything will work out. The ex-wife, the ex-husband, the ex-relationship, the legal situation that you may be facing. I mean, I've been with people, they came to treatment so they could be clean and sober and go to prison and serve their time because they were practicing the recovery principles. I was with a guy, I walked with him over to the Prescott PD when I was in treatment, and he turned in golf clubs that he had stolen from a golf place up in New England. Willing to go to any lengths, willing to do whatever it takes. And let me tell you something. You are worth it. You are worth it. And today I have a life wish instead of a death wish. I want to live one day at a time instead of die one day at a time. Now, I was paying child support. I have 2 daughters who are now grown. I have 4 grandkids. But when I went to treatment, and then I went to Prescott House, my ex-wife was making noise. She was in Florida. She goes, you're addicted to treatment. Move back and be a father to these children. So what did I do? I went to my group, went to my sponsor, went to my therapist. But that voice said, you need to finish. You need to finish. And so I did. Let me tell you what happened. At 6 years clean and sober, I got full legal custody of both of my daughters, and my ex-wife had to pay me child support. Now, I say that because in my addiction, I was trying to manipulate that crap because I didn't want to do my obligations, but I kept doing it. And because I was committed to my sobriety and my recovery, I really believed what they told me. If you keep doing this, make it your number one priority, everything will work out, and it did. Everything, I mean, how much more time? I don't want to go over. Got plenty of time, okay. And today, I'm at a podium, I'm sorry. Brothers and sisters, today, can I get a witness? Come on. It's about life and living. You already did the seventh tradition, right? When somebody says to you, if you stay clean and sober, your life will be beyond your wildest dreams, believe them. You don't have to feel it. You probably debunk it because you're smart, just like I was, and you can think of 5 reasons why it wouldn't work and how full of crap they are. Right? Because the thing I know about you and me, we're smart people. I don't care if you have a degree or not. I don't care if you got a GED or whatever, or if you even, whatever. You have this intelligence. They call it emotional intelligence. But to get to it, we have to be clean and sober if we really want to be functioning fully and awake. Now, so I told you I was a chaplain. I was clinically trained, pastoral counselor. I left Prescott House, and then they hired me. I was a house manager. Then I worked my way up. I was working there. I helped start their marketing department. Then I was the director of their outpatient program. But then I was in some personality conflicts with the owner, and I just couldn't abide it, and didn't want to do it. And I broke the rule there. I'd left without a job, and I didn't have a job. And I was unemployed for about 4 months. But you know what? I reached out to friends, sober friends, people like John E. and Mike B. and many others who helped me get through a tough time. Because fear is what we know, right? What are the acronyms? Fuck everything and run. Face everything and recover. Anybody else?
False evidence appearing real.
False evidence appearing real. And then I was at a meeting, and this is why it's important to go to meetings. Because you're going to hear something. Even when you go, that was a shitty meeting. I haven't been to any shitty meeting. I've been to one shitty meeting. Just one in 30 years. And it was a, what do they call it? Anyway, it was an inner city, Seattle, Fremont. Some people been to that meeting? And it was a rowdy-ass meeting. But a good buddy of mine who I went through Prescott House with, he and his sponsor went, and I took my wife to that meeting. And she wanted to go to the restroom before the meeting was over, and I said, you're not going by yourself. That's the kind of meeting it was. So I escorted her to the restroom, and I had to push a fella out of the way. Gently. But I was, that was the only bad meeting. There was probably I don't know what I learned from that meeting, but anyway, all the meetings I've gone to, and 90 meetings in 90 days, I go to them still. Even with this pandemic, you can go to meetings with Zoom fatigue or whatever. But some of us are so defiant, even when the pandemic was hitting last year, we're going to go to the live meetings anyway. But anyway, that's okay. But I was at a meeting about 3 years ago, and I heard a fellow say another acronym for fear. Forgetting everything's all right. Forgetting everything's all right. Now, I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what anxiety you're feeling. I don't know what medications you're on. I don't know whatever you're going through. It's all right. Now, let me coin another phrase. It's not mine. It's my sponsor's, and it pissed me off when he said it. Like most things that he tries to spiritually feed me, and I resist. Why do we do that? Good things we resist. It's part of our habit. It's a bad habit that we have, but we can practice a different way. We can learn to tell the truth quicker. We can learn to practice the truth quicker. Sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. But he says this, it's all good all the time. What? It's not all good all the time. But it is. It can be uncomfortable. It can be tough. In 2006, October of 2006, I was diagnosed with tongue cancer. And had I listened to the doctors here, I wouldn't be speaking, maybe sign language, because the ENT was going to cut a football-shaped chunk out of my tongue, and I wouldn't have been able to talk. But, you know, I used to be a chaplain, and I still, as a friend of mine said, I still hatch, match, and dispatch people. Thank you for the courtesy chuckle. And I did a wedding for a good friend of my oldest daughter, and her father was a pipe smoker, and he had stage 4 tongue and throat cancer. And anyway, we were on alert. We were looking for different places, and this is how it works. In many ways, you take the action, and then we leave the results up to old HP. So there was 3 micro laser surgeons in the world, and one of them was down at Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale. So I get a call Monday night after we exhausted everything and insurance, you know the whole game, and it's very frustrating. And I was scared. And this father, who I knew, called me. And he said, I heard about your diagnosis. Tell me what's going on. And I said, we tried to get to Mayo Clinic, but we're waiting 2 weeks. Now with cancer, you don't want to wait. I didn't want to wait. So he goes, hold on. And he had such extensive surgery. He knew Dr. Henney very intimately. He goes, I'm going to call Dr. Henney, and I'll get right back to you. And by God, he called me back, and he said, Dr. Henney said, can you come in tomorrow? He'll work you in during your lunch hour. And I said, do fat babies poop? I will be there. I will be there. And I was still, my wife Greta and I, we said we may have to sell everything and do bake sales or whatever, because this is out-of-network insurance. But we did it. We went through, and then I found out that I had an advocate in my insurance program, and she said, you need to write a letter and get your doctor to write a letter and get Dr. Henney to write a letter and appeal to the insurance company. And so I had the surgery. This is a funny story. I went to my meeting, my home group. It was in February. It was dark. It was cold. And I had 50 staples in my neck, because you can see I still got some scars here. But there was a guy here who was tattooed and pierced. And he came up to me and he said, man, that's awesome. 50 staples. Anyway, it's all relative, right? Perspective. And so right around Thanksgiving, and then right before Christmas, I was doing my regular checkups, and I was on the 101. If you've ever been to Phoenix, rush hour traffic. I was pissed off because they're holding me up. I got places to go, like back home. Come on, get out of my way. And I get a phone call, and it's an insurance lady, and she says, Mr. Morris, we've decided to make you an in-network provider, your case. And of course, my first thing, can I kiss you? She laughed. And we put that bill under the Christmas tree that year. And fortunately, I didn't have to have radiation, because this particular cancer does not respond to chemotherapy. But I had a brush with it. And And that worked out. It's all good all the time. My father died sober while I was sober. I've had many friends die sober, some not sober. The tragedy of some of my friends who are working at treatment centers, they forget that working in a treatment center is not working a program. And I know one fellow that I really respected that took his van and drove it off a cliff up here off Senator Highway somewhere. And I'm coming up on an anniversary of a good friend of mine. You probably know Greg Fine. He died sober, just died suddenly. Just one of those things. Just about a month shy of his 55th birthday. So I've learned how to grieve. I've learned how to have my feelings. I don't have to drink or use behind them. You can even insult me and hurt my feelings. I don't have to drink behind that. In fact, I learned about the 4 agreements, and one of them that's the hardest one for me is don't take anything personally. Because you know it's all about me, right? I had a friend that he said I couldn't go to football games for my first year of sobriety because when those guys huddled, I knew they were talking about me. Anyway, so I left my job at Prescott House. I was supposed to be an owner, part owner, and I was going to retire. I had plans. You see how we do? We make plans, and money was a big thing. Money is another one of those things. They say money is the root of all evils. No. Lack of money is the root of all evil. No, I'm just kidding. Money doesn't get it. I grew up poor. I thought money would fix it. It made me hang in and do things I didn't really agree with, and I went against my own self, and that's why I had to quit. It wasn't really about my boss. It was about me. I was there. And it was like my sponsor said, well, you put on the lipstick. You sold, you went against your own values. You're no different than the hookers on Van Buren. Because you're doing this, you're going against your own moral code. Sober. And so I said, nope, I'm not doing that anymore. And so I quit. And 4 months later, I got hired. Now, I don't want to scare anybody when I tell you this, so please don't be afraid. But maybe you won't be afraid. Maybe you won't. I hope you won't. I became a probation officer. Can you believe it? Now, I should be. I told you I was a 7. I was a 7. I was a 7 in the ACEs scale. I should be on somebody's caseload on a good day. Because the things that I did, I just didn't get caught. And it's not because I'm smarter than anybody. It's dumb luck and the grace of God. But I tell you what, I'm not very far removed from many people that end up on caseloads. But for the grace of God, go I. And I learned that concept here in Alcoholics Anonymous. And when they say to you, if you stay clean and sober and practice these principles, your life will become beyond your wildest dreams, it's true. Because today, for the last 7 years, I'm the chief of Yavapai County Adult Probation. And if you would have told me that at any time, I would say to you, you're crazy. Because I couldn't believe that even for myself. I couldn't visualize it. But this is how crazy our higher power is. A God of your understanding. Who wants the best for you. He or she or it, however you, the doorknob, it doesn't matter. They want the best for you. To live one day at a time. Because you have something to offer. Each one of you have something to offer. You have a story that I can't tell. You have somebody's life that you can touch by reaching out, but you're going to be hesitant because you don't want to look stupid, or maybe they'll reject you, or I don't even like that guy. That's the one you ought to reach out to. That's what I've learned. When anyone, anywhere, reaches out for help, we want the hand of AA always to be there, always to be there. And for that, I am responsible. You are responsible. So get well, stay well, commit to living one day at a time. And I'll tell you, if it can happen for me, because, I committed the unpardonable sin, whatever that was. I did it. And I was an ordained Baptist minister, so I really screwed up. And I was in Nashville, Tennessee doing all that stuff. And I never got struck by lightning yet. But my life has become beyond my wildest dream. Now, I just want to say one other thing about, how much more time? Huh? Good? Okay. I don't want to go over time because I can keep talking, and that's one of my problems. I'll use that as an excuse. So, and it's about relationships. Not just whatever, heterosexual, homosexual, whatever you're in, whatever your relationship orientation is. It's learning to have a relationship with yourself first. And that sounded so foreign to me because at least I didn't think there was a self in there. But what I found, there was a pretty cool self in there. He just didn't have much time to talk to me. I wasn't listening to him. And here's another gift just for me. I was separated from my daughters for almost a year. I got full legal custody of them at 6 years clean and sober. If you'd have told me that was going to happen, no way. My wife, Greta, helped me raise my daughters. And one day, I was talking to my oldest daughter, who there's a whole bunch of stories about both of them, and I'm so proud I'd want to tell you all if you want to take a little more time, but maybe after, or call me up, because they're just bright lights. But one day I was talking to my oldest daughter, and this can happen for you, and this was another one of those promises coming true, that we'll know a new freedom and a new happiness. We won't want to reject the past or shut the door on it. I wanted to reject the past, man. And it was one of you guys, when I was about a year sober, came to me and said, "John, do you do weddings?" And I said, "Well, they never took away my ordination." "Yeah, I do. And I do damn good ones." And that took the shame, part of the shame started going away. But anyway, I'm on the phone with my oldest daughter, and she's very much like me, headstrong, although she's a lot smarter than me, always beats my butt in Scrabble. It pisses me off. I can never win. I want to win. Anyway. But, because she can do this thing. She has this facility where, she can get triple word scores, and then, yeah. It's frustrating. But anyway, I'm talking to her on the phone, and just one of those moments. And I said, "Honey, I hope I didn't fuck you up too bad." And she said, "Daddy, you fucked me up just enough." And we both laughed, and tears came down my eyes. Because what I learned is some of you smart people said, some of you dads out there, said in a meeting, "I am the father I always wanted." My sponsor told me I had to learn how to be my own best parent, my own best friend. My first thought was, fuck you, that's a stupid ass idea. I don't even know how I'm ever going to get that done because I don't have a clue. And I'm not very good at it even now, but I'm better. I'm a lot better. But if you can find that gift within your heart, in your own experience, if you stay sober, it will happen, I promise. And if you don't believe me, read the stories in the big book. The keys of the kingdom. I mean, there's so many of them in there about hope, about life and living. So, I don't know all of you. I see some very dear friends in the audience, people who knew me when. You're my friends. People who we would never mix other than here, right? Probably. We might look at each other and go, I wouldn't mix with that guy or gal or whatever. But in this room is where the power is. In these meetings we go to, in the steps that we work, is the power of life. So will you join me in living one day at a time? That's my commitment. I hope it's yours too. Thanks for letting me share.